Have you ever felt it? That cold prickle of fear and dread on the hottest day of the year. Welcome to Nocturnal Nightmares TV. Tonight, we explore the chilling truth that horror doesn't take a vacation. We present a collection of harrowing, true encounters. From the silent waters of a cursed lake to the rustling cornfields that demand a sacrifice. This is a summer you will not forget. The first thing that felt wrong about Havenwood Lake wasn't the sight of it. I'd driven 12 hours to spend the summer with my girlfriend, Chloe, in her impossibly picturesque hometown. The lake was the town's heart, a vast expanse of glassy, dark water surrounded by whispering pines. It was beautiful, but unnervingly still. No birds sang near its shores. No frogs chorused at dusk. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the old wooden docks, a sound like a slow, patient tongue. Chloe had grown up here, and the lake was in her blood. "You have to swim," she'd said, her eyes sparkling with an intensity that was almost feverish. "Bird, you haven't really been to Havenwood until the lake has held you." The town's entire social life revolved around the water. Bonfires on the shore, daytime swimming, late-night boat rides under the stars. Everyone was friendly, with sun-kissed skin and easy smiles. But they all shared a strange, collective habit. They would wade into the water, take a deep breath, and sink beneath the surface, staying under for an unnervingly long time. They'd emerge, gasping, laughing, their eyes seeming a little darker, a little calmer than before. They called it the quiet. I tried it once. Boo. The water was colder than it should have been in July, a deep, bone-aching cold that felt ancient. I held my breath and dipped under. The world vanished into a murky, silent green. A profound sense of pressure enveloped me, not just on my ears, but on my mind. I felt a strange, compelling pull towards the dark, bottomless center of the lake. A sense of something immense and aware down there, in the silt and the darkness. I panicked, thrashing my way back to the surface, my lungs burning. Chloe and her friends just laughed. "Do fight it too much," she said, her hand on my arm. Her skin was cool, almost clammy, despite the summer heat. "You have to let it in." As the weeks passed, a subtle dread began to curdle in my gut. Chloe was changing. Her normally warm skin was always cool now. She smelled faintly of wet earth and algae, a scent that clung to her clothes, her hair, her very presence. Her eyes, once a bright hazel, seemed to have deepened to a dark, muddy green, the color of the lake itself. She was quieter, more serene, but her serenity felt hollow, her movements too fluid. Boof! The vibrant, chaotic girl I loved was being replaced by a calm, placid stranger. One afternoon, I was talking to Mr. Abernathy, a reclusive old man who lived on the edge of town, the only resident who never went near the water. P saw me, looking at the lake, a frown on my face. "It changes them," he rasped, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. He had a wild, haunted look in his eyes. They go in, but they don't all come back out. Not the same, anyway. The lake, it's hungry. It takes their fire and leaves the shell. His words chilled me to the bone. That night, I confronted Chloe. I told her we needed to leave, that this place was wrong. She just smiled, a slow, serene expression that didn't reach her dark, placid eye. "But you haven't been baptized yet," she whispered, her voice a low, melodic hum. "The summer isn't over. Tomorrow is the Founders' Festival. The whole town goes in together. You'll understand then. We'll be together, truly." The festival was a nightmare. The entire town gathered on the shore as the sun set, their faces illuminated by tiki torches. There was no music, no laughter, just a quiet, expectant reverence. They all looked the same cool skin, the same faint scent of decay, the same dark, bottomless eyes. Chloe took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "It's time," she said, her voice blending with the murmur of the crowd. "It's time to become one, to join the quiet." She pulled me towards the water. Brrr. I saw their faces, then all turned towards me, their expressions not of welcome, but of hunger, a predatory, collective will. I finally understood. The town wasn't just enjoying the lake, they were a part of it. They were its limbs, its lure. I ripped my hand from Chloe's grasp and ran. I didn't look back, but I could hear them. Not a pursuit, but a unified, sighing sound of disappointment. I scrambled into my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition, and sped away from heaven. As I crested the hill leaving town, I chanced one last look in my rearview mirror. What I saw will haunt me until the day I die. The entire town, hundreds of people, were walking calmly into the black water. They didn't swim, they just walked, hand in hand, sinking beneath the surface, without a ripple. There, torchlights, extinguished one by one, until only the silent, gaping darkness remained. They weren't drowning, they were going home. The thing in the lake hadn't just changed Chloe, it had taken her. Big girl, the girl I had driven 12 hours to see, was gone, her skin worn by an ancient, aquatic intelligence. For weeks, I had been living with a monster, sleeping next to it, kissing it, and all it wanted was to pull me down into the cold, silent murk, to make me another one of its quiet, empty shells. That summer, to save money for college, I took the only job I could find, detasseling corn, for a massive agricultural conglomerate in rural Nebraska. The work was brutal, the sun relentless, but the pay was good. They bussed a dozen of us out to the fields every evening for the night shift. A sprawling, endless sea of corn that stretched to a horizon you could never quite see. The stalks were easily 10 feet tall, creating a dense, claustrophobic labyrinth under the cold, white glare of the portable light towers. From the first night, the field felt wrong. Be air within the rose, was heavy, still, and dead silent, save for the constant, dry rustle of a million leaves. It was a sound that got into your head, a sibilant whisper that never, ever stopped. Our crew chief, a grizzled man named Russo with a permanent scowl, laid down the rules on day one. You work in pairs. You never wander off. You don't listen to anything you think you hear. And if you see something moving in the rows, you look the other way. It's just the wind playing tricks. His warnings felt too specific, too practiced. My partner was a quiet kid named Sam. We worked our way down the rows, yanking the pollen-heavy tassels from the tops of the stalks. The rhythmic rip toss, step becoming a hypnotic trance. But Russo was right. Prue, you did hear things. Faint giggles, like a child playing hide-and-seek. The sound of someone running parallel to you in the next row over. Always just out of sight. We all heard it. We all ignored it, just like he said. The first person to disappear was a loudmouth from Omaha named a week into the job. 1 minute he was there, complaining about the heat. The next, he was gone. Russo just shook his head, marked his name off a clipboard, and told us to keep working. He probably got spooked and walked off, Russo said, his voice flat. He'll turn up. He never did. His car sat in the dusty parking lot for the rest of the summer. After that, the fear was a constant living thing among us. The whispers in the corn grew bolder. Sometimes they'd mimic our own voices. I'd hear Sam call my name from a few rows over, even though he was right beside me. We'd catch glimpses of movement. At the far end of the row, something tall and unnaturally thin, darting between the stalks with a speed that wasn't human. It was dark, like a shadow given form, and it moved with a horrifying, jerking gait, like a broken marionette. We started finding things. A single discarded shoe, a wallet, empty of cash, but still holding an ID. Small, crudely made effigies of corn husks, tied together with what looked like human hair, left hanging from the stalks. Each discovery tightened the knot of terror in our stomachs. We were being watched. We were being hunted. The worst part was the sound. Unstill nights, when the wind died completely, you could hear it. A soft, wet, rhythmic tearing sound, followed by a faint, contented sigh, coming from deep within the field. It was the sound of something feeding. Sam and I made a pact. We would never be more than an arm's length apart. We worked back to back, our eyes constantly scanning the oppressive green walls around us. One night, a light tower at the far end of the field sputtered and died, plunging a massive section into absolute darkness. Russo yelled at us to hold our positions until he could get the generator going. We were plunged into a terrifying, rustling blackness, armed with only our small headlamps. That's when it happened. A high-pitched, terrified scream ripped through the night from the darkened section, followed by a wet, sickening crunch. Then, silence. When the lights flickered back on, a girl named Maya was gone. All that was left was her headlamp on the ground, its beam pointing at a single blood-soaked corn stalk. That was it for me. I grabbed Sam, We're leaving. Now, we ran. We didn't wait for the bus. B just sprinted through the endless rows, heading in the direction of the parking lot. The rustling around us intensified. No longer just the sound of leaves, but of pursuit. We could hear it keeping pace with us, a loping, dragging sound. We could hear the whispers, angry now, hissing our names from all directions. We burst out of the cornfield, gasping for air, our lungs on fire. We didn't stop until we reached my beat-up car. As I fumbled with the keys, I looked back at the field. Standing at the very edge of the corn, silhouetted against the light towers, were two of them. Tall, impossibly thin figures with limbs that were too long. Their bodies a jerky, shifting mass of shadow and leaves. They didn't have faces, just smooth, dark voids. And they were just standing there, watching. Not with anger, but with what felt like patience. We drove away and never looked back. Later, I found a small news article online about the agricultural company. Every year, they hired dozens of seasonal workers for their Nebraska field. And every year, a handful were reported as walk-offs or missing persons. It was an accepted loss, a rounding error in their profit margins. I realized the horrifying truth then. The job wasn't just to detassel corn. We were the payment. We were the time. We were the offering left for the things that lived and hunted in the night corn. A seasonal sacrifice to ensure a bountiful harvest. They didn't care who lived or died. They just needed to feed the field. My plan for the summer was simple. Drive my recently deceased grandfather's vintage camper van from Ohio to California. It was meant to be a journey of self-discovery, a way to process my grief. The third week found me crossing the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, a landscape so alien it felt like another planet. A perfectly flat, blindingly white expanse of cracked earth, stretched to an infinite horizon under a dome of searing blue sky. I pulled over midday to take some photos, the heat shimmering off the ground in wavy, distorted lines. That's when I first saw him. He was a speck in the distance, a dark shape against the overwhelming white. I assumed it was another traveler, maybe a stranded motorist. I squinted, trying to get a better look. He was just standing there, a man, alone, in the middle of nowhere. I got back in the van and drove on, figuring he was fine. But after 20 minutes of driving, I looked in my rearview mirror. He was still there, in the exact same spot. A little smaller, but still visible, unsettling. But I brushed it off. An hour later, I stopped for gas at a lonely, rundown station at the edge of the flats. As the tank filled, I glanced back out at the vast whiteness, and I saw him again. This time he was closer. Not by much, but undeniably closer. P was still just a silhouette, but I could make out more detail. He was wearing a dark, old-fashioned suit, and he was smiling. I couldn't see his features clearly, but I could see the distinct, upturned curve of a wide, unnerving grin. My heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm. How could he have gotten closer? I had been driving at 60 miles an hour. He couldn't have run that fast. It had to be a different person. B. I paid for my gas and got back on the road, pushing the old van as fast as it would go. I didn't look back. For the next hour, I focused on the road, the hum of the tires, anything to distract me from the creeping dread. Finally, I chanced to look in the side view mirror. My blood ran cold. He was right there, pacing the van. He wasn't running. He was taking long, slow, deliberate strides, his arms swinging gently at his sides, that same wide, fixed smile plastered on his face. But he was effortlessly keeping pace with my vehicle as it hurtled across the salt. His face was clearer now. It was pale, waxy, and smooth, like a mannequin's. But the smile was carved deep into the flesh, a grotesque, permanent brick blue. His eyes were just dark, empty pits that seemed to absorb the blinding sunlight. I screamed and stomped on the accelerator. Devon groaned, but I managed to squeeze a few more miles per hour out of it. The smiling man didn't change his pace. P just glided alongside me, his head turning slowly to keep his empty gaze locked on me through the passenger window. I swerved the wheel, trying to run him over, but he moved with me, a phantom locked to my van. Panic gave way to a chilling, resigned terror. This thing wasn't playing by the rules of reality. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the salt flats in hues of orange and purple, the van's engine sputtered and died. I coated to a stop in the middle of the vast, silent emptiness. The smiling man stopped too, standing about 20 feet from my door, his permanent grin looking even more hideous in the fading light. We sat there for what felt like an eternity, a silent, terrifying standoff. The sun disappeared, and a cold, profound darkness fell, the stars appearing with an incredible, indifferent clarity. He didn't move. He just stood there, smiling. I huddled in the van, crying, my mind fractured with fear. Eventually, through sheer exhaustion, I passed out. I awoke to the sound of a tapping on the window. I flinched, expecting to see his face, but there was nothing. I looked around. He was gone. The salt flats were empty, and in the distance, I saw headlights approaching. A highway patrol car pulled up beside me. The officer was kind, his presence a comforting balm of normalcy. He said, my van was out of gas, which was impossible. I had filled the tank. Peeve, he offered me a ride to the next town. Gratefully, I accepted, leaving my grandfather's van behind. In the patrol car, I tried to tell him about the smiling man. He just nodded, a sad, knowing look on his face. The heat does strange things to people out here, he said gently. You see things that aren't there. He dropped me off at a small, dusty motel. The next morning, I arranged for a bus ticket to California, deciding to abandon the van and the rest of the trip. As I waited at the bus station, I saw a familiar vehicle drive past. It was my grandfather's camper van, and behind the wheel, I could see a figure in a dark suit. As it passed, the driver turned his head. It was me, or rather, a perfect, waxy copy of me. It had my face, my hair, my clothes, but its mouth was stretched into a wide, unnatural, permanent smile. It didn't see me. Its gaze was fixed on the road ahead. I finally understood. The smiling man didn't want to hurt me. He didn't want to kill me. He wanted to replace me. He had been a traveler once, too stranded and hunted by the thing before him. It was a cycle, a curse that haunts the salt flats. It takes your ride, it takes your face, and it leaves you behind, naked and alone in the vast whiteness, with nothing left but a smile, waiting for the next traveler to come along. Somewhere out there, a new dark figure is standing, waiting, and beginning its long, slow walk across the salt. Every summer at Camp Harlow, there was one tradition that was both terrifying and sacred. The bell run, the legend, as told by the counselors around a crackling campfire, was that the woods surrounding the camp were home to an ancient, hungry spirit. The old settlers called the silence. It was a thing of shadow and bone that hated noise. To keep it at bay, a single brave camper was chosen each year to run to a clearing, deep in the forbidden part of the woods, and ring an old iron bell that hung from a dead oak tree. The sound, they said, would appease the spirit and keep the camp safe for another summer. It was seen as a great honor. This year, my bunkmate, a fearless, athletic kid named Thomas, was chosen. I was pathologically shy and terrified of the woods, so I was both relieved and deeply envious of his courage. Midnight of the run, the entire camp gathered at the edge of the woods. The air was thick with a nervous, electric energy. The camp director, Mr. Wallace, a man with a kind face but eyes that held a deep, sadness, handed Thomas a compass and a flashlight. Follow the old trail. Ring the bell once, then come straight back. Don't stop for anything. Thomas grinned, gave us all a thumbs up, and disappeared into the looming darkness. We waited, our breath held. A profound silence settling over the camp. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then we heard it. A single, clear, metallic clang echoing through the night. By a cheer erupted from the campers. He had done it. We were safe. We waited for his return, and waited. An hour passed. The counselors started to look worried. Their forced smiles not quite reaching their eyes. Mr. Wallace's face was a stony mask. B plunged into the woods, their flashlight beams dancing nervously among the trees. They found Thomas's flashlight first, lying on the trail about halfway to the bell. It was still on. Right a little further, they found his compass, its glass shattered. But of Thomas, there was no sign. He was gone. The rest of the summer was a somber, muted affair. The official story was that Thomas had gotten lost and succumbed to the elements. A tragic accident. But we campers knew better. We'd heard the whispers, the way the woods seemed to go unnaturally quiet, after the bell was rung. We knew the silencer had taken him. The next summer, I came back to Camp Hollow, driven by a morbid need for answer. I was older, and the fear had been replaced by annoying, angry curiosity. Pray. I started snooping around Mr. Wallace's office, and in a locked filing cabinet, I found them. Decades of camp record. Tucked away in the back was a thin folder labeled incidents. Inside were reports, yellowed with age, detailing the camper who had gone missing. One for 1998, one for 1987, one for 1974. The dates were sporadic, but the story was always the same. A camper, chosen for a special task, vanishes in the wood, never found. The horrifying truth began to dawn on me. Bell run wasn't a tradition, it was a lottery. I had to see the bell for myself. One afternoon, during free swim, I slipped away and followed the forbidden trail. It was overgrown, the air heavy and still. After a 20-minute walk, I found the clearing. It was a perfect circle of dead earth, where nothing grew. But in the center stood an old ancient oak, and from one of its branches hung the rusty iron bell. The ground around the base of the tree was littered with things. Old compasses, faded flashlights, a worn baseball cap, a single muddy sneaker. Decades of offerings left behind by the chosen. Buys as I stood there, a cold dread washing over me. I saw something carved into the trunk of the oak, just below the bell. It wasn't a warning, it was a diagram, a crude drawing of a large, skeletal creature with long arms, its ears depicted as huge, spiraling cones, and below, a simple, chilling equation. Bell equals dinner. It hit me like a physical blow. The legend was a lie, a complete, twisted inversion of the truth. Ringing the bell didn't ward the spirit off. The silencer didn't hate noise. It was blind. It hunted by sound. Ringing the bell didn't appease it. It was a dinner bell. It told the creature exactly where its next meal was. The silence that followed wasn't a sign of peace. It was the silence of a predator that has locked onto its prey and no longer needs to listen. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs. One had to get out of there. As I turned to run, my foot caught on a root and I fell, my head striking the iron bell with a sickening, loud clang. The sound echoed through the clearing, sharp and final, and then silence. An absolute, profound silence that was more terrifying than any scream. The birds stopped chirping, the wind died, the rustle of leaves ceased, the world held its breath. I scrambled to my feet, every instinct screaming at me to run by. I was frozen, paralyzed by the sudden, suffocating quiet. I could feel it. Something was coming. Something was moving through the woods towards the sound, towards me. I didn't see it, but I could feel its approach as a wave of cold, a vibration in the dead earth. It was moving with a patient, unhurried certainty. It knew exactly where I was, and That summer, after I lost my job, my parents sent me to stay with my great-aunt. Her house was a sprawling, neglected Victorian relic at the end of a long, unpaved road, suffocated by overgrown gardens. Elspeth herself was a wisp of a woman, with skin like faded parchment and eyes that seemed to look right through you. The house had no television, no internet, and smelled of dust, dried lavender, and something faintly sour, like old paper. My room was on the second floor, a large, airy space dominated by the wallpaper. It was a hideous, faded floral patterned lumps of sickly yellow roses and pale green vines that snaked and tangled across all four walls. From the moment I stepped inside, I hated it. It felt busy, watchful. I tried to ignore it, spending my days reading and my nights battling insomnia in the unfamiliar, creaking silence of the house. But my eyes were always drawn back to the wallpaper. In the dim light of evening, or the hazy glow of morning, the patterns would seem to shift. I started seeing faces in the intricate tangles of vines and petals. A woman's sorrowful profile, a man's face twisted in a silent scream, by a small, cherubic child peeking from behind a wilting rose. At first, I dismissed it as pareidolia, my bored mind playing tricks on me. But the faces became more distinct, more numerous. I started to recognize them. I'd find old sepia-toned photographs in dusty albums. Downstairs, Elspeth's long-dead husband, a cousin who'd vanished in the war, a pair of twins who had lived in the house in the 1890s. And I would see their faces again later, subtly woven into the fabric of the wallpaper in my room, their expressions trapped and sorrowful. A cold, creeping dread began to take root. I tried to talk to Elspeth about it. The wallpaper, I'd start, my voice trembling slightly. It's unusual. She would just give me a thin, knowing smile. It's been here a long time, dear. Part of the house now. We all become part of the house in the end. Her words offered no comfort. The phenomenon grew worse. I started to hear things at night, faint, dry whispers that seemed to emanate directly from the walls, like the rustle of old paper. They were too faint to make out words, but they were filled with a desperate, pleading sorrow. Sometimes I would wake up with a jolt, convinced that one of the figures in the paper had moved. Pat, its painted eyes now looking directly at me. The air in the room grew heavy, thick, with a sour, papery smell. I felt constantly weak, drained, as if the room itself were leeching the life from me. I began to spend more and more time in bed, too tired to even go downstairs. I would just lie there, staring at the walls, at the silent, trapped faces of my ancestors. One sweltering August afternoon, I noticed a new shape forming in a blank space near the ceiling. It was faint, at first a mere suggestion in the floral pattern. But over the next few days, it grew clearer, more defined. It was a face, my face, but my expression was one of slack-jawed, hollow-eyed horror. I screamed, scrambling out of bed and tearing at the wall. My fingernails scraped against the dry, brittle paper. To my horror, it peeled away easily, not in strips, but in a large, coherent sheet. And underneath, the wall wasn't plaster. It was a dark, fibrous, organic material, almost like pressed pulp, and it was faintly warm to the touch. Embedded in its surface, I could see the faint, ghostly outlines of human forms, pressed flat, their features distorted in agony. The house wasn't just old, it was alive, and it was hungry. The wallpaper wasn't a decoration, it was a skin, a new layer that formed over those the house consumed, trapping their spirits, their faces, their very essence within its fibrous prison. I had to get out. I stumbled out of the room, my legs weak, and half fell down the grand staircase. Elspeth was standing at the bottom, holding a cup of tea, her expression one of calm, placid disappointment. "Leaving so soon, dear?" she asked, her voice soft. "But you're not finished yet, please. The house is still so fond of you." I pushed past her and threw open the heavy front door behind. I didn't run into the overgrown garden. The door opened directly into my room. I was standing on the threshold, looking at my unmade bed, the peeling wallpaper, and the new, horrified face. Taking shape on the wall my face, I slammed the door, my heart seizing in my chest, and ran for the back door, through the kitchen. Two opened back into my room. Every door, every window had become a portal, leading back to my floral prison. I am writing this now, sitting on the edge of the bed. I am so very tired. The sour smell is stronger, and the whispers from the walls are clearer. They are saying my name, welcoming me. My reflection in the dusty wardrobe mirror looks pale, translucent. My skin has a papery quality to it. When I look at my hands, I can almost see the faint floral patterns beginning to bloom just beneath the surface. Elspeth was right. We all become part of the house in the end. It's just a matter of time before I am fully absorbed, my face just another silent, screaming flower in the endless, hungry garden of the wallpaper. Every small town has a ghost story, but ours had a price tag. The story belonged to Hatch's Bridge, a decrepit covered bridge that spanned the muddy, slow-moving waters of the Blackwood Creek. It was the kind of place that festered in the summer heat, smelling of damp, rotting wood and secret. The legend the town kids told each other was a simple one. A woman, heartbroken and lost, had leaped from the bridge a century ago. They said if you walked to the center of the bridge at midnight and whispered her name, Elisa, she would appear, weeping, searching for the locket her lover had given her. A sad, harmless story. A story we were about to find out was a dangerous, deliberate lie. That summer was a crucible of boredom. I was 17, and my friends Mike, Sarah, and I had exhausted every form of small-town entertainment. It was Mike, fueled by cheap beer and adolescent bravado, who suggested, "Let's go see the lady," he'd said, a smirk on his face. "I bet it's just a load of crap," Sarah, ever the pragmatist, rolled her eyes. But I saw a flicker of curiosity in them. I was the quiet one, the lawkeeper, and the bridge had always unsettled me on a primal level. The way the cicadas went silent when you got close. The way the shadows inside seemed cooler and darker than they had any right to be. By peer pressure is a powerful current. And so, just before midnight, we found ourselves walking a dusty path to Hatch's Bridge. The structure loomed before us, a long, dark throat threatening to swallow the moonlight. We stepped onto the old wooden planks, our footsteps echoing unnaturally in the enclosed space. The air inside was thick, heavy, and still. We walked to the center. The creek. Below us, a silent black ribbon. "Well," Mike whispered, his bravado fading in the oppressive quiet. "Someone's got to say it." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Eliza," she murmured, her voice barely a sound. We waited nothing. Just the faint smell of decay and the suffocating darkness. A nervous laugh escaped Mike's lips. "C, told you. Total crap." P turned to leave, and that's when we saw her. She wasn't at the end of the bridge or shimmering in the air. She was just there, standing near the entrance we'd just come through, blocking our way out. She wasn't weeping, and she wasn't transparent. She was solid, beautiful in a severe, old-fashioned way, wearing a simple high-collared dress, the color of faded bruises. Her face was pale and serene, her eyes dark pools of calm. But what made my blood run cold was that, as she stood over the moonlit water, she cast no reflection. We were frozen, a trio of terrified statues. She took a slow, gliding step towards us, her feet making no sound on the wooden planks. Her voice, when she spoke, was like honey and broken glass. "You've come at a good time," she said, her serene smile never wavering. "The summer air is so full of wishes." This wasn't part of the legend. She wasn't supposed to speak. She wasn't supposed to be like this. Mike found his voice first, a trembling squeak. We were just leaving. "By you haven't made a wish," she said, tilting her head. The movement was bird-like, unnatural. "Everyone who comes to me has a wish, a summer wish, burning so bright. Tell me yours. I can help." She looked at Mike. He was the star pitcher for our high school team, and the regional championship was next week. He was obsessed with it. He swallowed hard. "I want to pitch a perfect game," he stammered. The lady's smile widened. "A fine wish." She turned her dark eyes to Sarah, who dreamed of being an actress, and had been trying to land the lead in the county's summer stock play. "And you, my dear?" "The lead," Sarah whispered, captivated. "I want the lead role." "Of course you do." The lady's gaze finally fell on me. I felt a coldness so profound it was like being plunged into ice water. My mind was a blank slate of terror. I couldn't think of a wish. I couldn't think of anything but escape. "And you, quiet one," she purred. "I don't want anything," I choked out. A flicker of something, annoyance, disappointment, crossed her face. before the serene mask slipped back into place. "A pity," she said, turning her attention back to Mike and Sarah. "A wish for a wish. I only ask for a small price. Prideful. Something you won't even miss." "What?" Mike asked, his greed outweighing his fear. "Your reflection," she said simply. "Just the one you cast in the water. I'm so very lonely. You see, I like to collect them. Company for the long nights." It sounded insane, harmless, a trick of words. Mike and Sarah exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. They both nodded. The lady glided forward. She raised a pale, slender hand and touched Mike's forehead. Then, for a split second, I saw their bodies shimmer like heat haze off asphalt. They gasped, their eyes wide, not with fear, but with a sudden, euphoric energy. "It is done," the lady whispered. Then she simply faded, not like smoke, but like a thought you can't quite hold on to, leaving us alone in the oppressive silence of the bridge. The walk back was strange. Mike and Sarah were giddy, electric, talking a mile a minute about their coming triumphs. They said they felt incredible, lighter than air. I felt like I was going to be sick. The next week, Mike pitched the game of his life. A perfect game, 9 innings of impossible, unhittable fastball. 2 days later, Sarah got a call. The girl who'd been cast in the lead had suddenly dropped out. The role was hers. Their wishes had come true, spectacularly. But I saw what no one else did. They were changing. There was a subtle flatness to them, a lack of depth in their eyes. Beloved, louder, but their smiles never quite felt real. They were the brilliant two-dimensional drawings of the friends I once knew. The horrifying truth came to me one afternoon as we passed by a storefront downtown. I glanced at our reflections in the large plate glass window. I was there, but beside me, where Mike and Sarah should have been, there was nothing, just empty space. I grabbed them, spun them around to face the glass. "Look, don't you see? You're not there." We both stared at the window, then back at me, confused. "What are you talking about, Leo?" Sarah asked, a frown on her face. "Where, right there?" They genuinely couldn't see. They had given away their reflections, and in doing so, had lost the ability to even perceive them. They had traded a fundamental part of their being, their very image of self, for a fleeting summer victory. That was the last time we hung out. They were the popular kids now, the town heroes, and I was the weird, quiet kid who kept staring at puddles and mirrors with a terrified look on my face. The lady on the bridge didn't want your locket. She didn't want your tears. Phew, she wanted you. Not your life, but your substance. She was a collector of people, flattening them out, taking their reflections to hang on the dark, watery walls of her eternal prison, leaving behind bright, hollow shells to walk the earth. I escaped with my reflection, but I see my friends sometimes, laughing in a crowd, and a part of me dies. Bye. Because I know that in the world of mirrors, they aren't there at all.